Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Zach.
and welcome to the Movie Vault.
Today, we're going to be reviewing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a movie about movies.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a comedy drama released in 2019 that was directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Ooh.
Alright, so should we just dive right in?
Let's do it. So, it starts off, well, first of all, Quentin Tarantino gets his dream team again. Brad Pitt and the other guy.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
So it's interesting because Quentin Tarantino started off his career with a lot by actually making a lot of people's careers. Samuel L. Jackson got his big break working for Tarantino, and
Thurman, right? Didn't
Uma
she?
Thurman
Yeah.
she really only did Tarantino movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know her from anything else.
Same.
And so later in his career, he started to be able to grab big names like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. But he has also helped direct them to some of their best performances, in my opinion.
And in my opinion, too.
Zach agrees with me there.
I do.
That's at least that he might not agree with me on everything. So
Probably not. To be clear, Ben really liked this movie, and I did not. So that's just what
that's our initial thoughts about the movie. Now we'll get a little bit more in depth. So the movie starts with the opening of a fake TV show trailer, and a lot of these mini movies are spread throughout. This one is Bounty Law, which is not a real show, I don't think. Yeah, because it stars Rick Dalton, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio,
who doesn't exist in real life.
and is the main character of the movie. And then we see an interview of him with Cliff Booth, who is his stunt double. We also see other movies that Rick was in, or TV shows, such as The 14 Fists of McCluskey, which has an ode to Inglourious Bastards, and some other movies and TV shows along the way.
Let's just say there's a lot of Easter eggs and stuff in this movie relating to other Quentin Tarantino movies, I'd say.
He is also very known for doing that.
Yeah, he's very self-referential, if that tells you how prideful he is. So.
Yeah, Tarantino has made himself into his own genre, for better or for worse.
For worse. Yes. So Al Pacino comes in the next scene. He meets with Leo and Brad, or as their stage names, Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. And Al Pacino basically says to Brad Pitt's character, or Leo DiCaprio's character, Rick Dalton, he says, basically he's a has-been. He was on the top, he had a great TV show going, but now he's only playing villain roles. Or what do they call him in this show, in the movie? They call the villains the big bad or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Or they're the heavy.
The heavy, yes, the heavy. So he's only the heavy from now on. So basically, Al Pacino is degrading Leo's character and saying, you are a has-been. You aren't anything anymore. Your career is finished.
But it doesn't come without a bit of redemption, because he is suggesting that he goes to Rome and become a spaghetti western star. Rick isn't too keen on this idea at the start of the movie, and he goes and complains to Cliff, who is kind of his therapist in this scene.
He's also his driver, because didn't Leo's character, or Rick Dalton, lose his license or something?
Oh, yeah. We get a little flashback scene
Yeah.
that explains that.
Mm-hmm. So, so they... Basically, Rick contemplates whether or not he should do this, and there's a couple things that happen. So soon after that, he goes to a pool party where we meet Margot Robbie's character, and Steve McQueen's there. So this movie is historically accurate to an extent. The only people that are fake in this movie, I think, are the two title characters, which are Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. I think most of the other characters actually existed in real life.
A lot of the other characters did. Probably some of the background characters didn't, but for the most part, the major characters in this movie were legitimately real. And we see that Margot Robbie's character of Sharon Tate, who is a historical figure, she lives right next to where Rick Dalton lives in this movie. And she's dating famous director Roman Polanski, who is also a real person and directed famous movies such as Rosemary's Baby and The Pianist more recently.
Who I believe is still alive to this day.
He's still alive, but he's not allowed in America anymore. Let's just say he did some things that have caused him to be barred from accessing the country. So, not the most upstanding person.
Go watch his movies, though.
His movies, I think, are good.
Yeah. Anyway, in the next scene, we get to see Brad Pitt shirtless, so that's nice.
Yeah, we see that Brad Pitt is also a handyman.
Yep. He's
Which-
very, very handy.
That was probably just put in the movie to get a Brad Pitt shirtless scene. And then we see Rick go on to set and start to meet some of the producers who are casting him. And we see the dynamic of him being a guest star on other people's TV shows.
Yeah. So he basically doesn't take Al Pacino's advice yet. He basically goes and becomes another bad guy on another TV show. And as he kind of goes into this role, he meets Kurt Russell's character. Kurt Russell's in this movie too. And Kurt Russell's character is the producer of the TV show that he is now the heavy in. And Kurt Russell doesn't like Cliff, which is Rick and Cliff are a package deal. They're good friends, and Cliff drives Rick everywhere. But if Rick is the bad guy on Kurt Russell's TV show, then how? But Kurt Russell doesn't like Cliff, though. So he basically says that he thinks that Cliff killed his wife, and Kurt Russell's wife also believes that as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that this TV show that Rick is guest starring on is called Lancer, and it was actually a real TV show that aired for 2 seasons. And so we see James Stacey is played by an actor who I thought was Walton Goggins, who is another Tarantino guy, but it actually wasn't. It was somebody else.
He's awesome. Yeah.
But so that's kind of cool to see that they were actually recreating a real TV set.
But yeah, there's actually a lot of famous people that are in this movie, but played by other people. There's the next scene is when Cliff really shows his true colors. He's a tough guy. He's probably had a hard past. He's probably done some things that he shouldn't, and you can kind of tell in the next scene because he goes into the training for stuntmen, and because Cliff is also Rick's stuntman, so he's training a stuntman, and the person training Cliff is actually Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee's there, and he's teaching everybody how to make fight scenes look real, how to get hurt and not actually get hurt, and to make fight scenes just be the most accurate that they can be. And you explain what happened.
So Bruce Lee is ranting on this huge monologue about fighting, and he says that, you know, in martial arts they have these competitions, but if they were really, you know, doing real martial arts, they would fight to the death, but they're not allowed to. That's why he respects boxing a lot, is what he says, because guys like Muhammad Ali, who was pretty prominent at that time, would do anything that they could to win. And people every once in a while in sports like boxing and MMA do die. It is a big sport. And so he goes on and on about this, and then he eventually says that he could cripple Muhammad Ali in a fight. And to this, Cliff disagrees with. And so they get into a little disagreement, and then they say, okay, let's fight over this. And basically they're just like, first to 3 on the ground. And the first time, Bruce gets the best of Cliff, but it kind of looks like Cliff is giving it to him easy. And then the next sparring match that they have, Cliff rejects, I think there's a kick, and he just picks up Bruce and throws him in.
It was so cool.
Yeah, he throws him into the side of a car, and there's a huge dent.
It was a nice car, too.
And then we see Zoe Bell's character, who I don't really know who she is, but I think she's another Tarantino regular. And she hates everything about Cliff.
Zoe Bell's character is Kurt Russell's wife in this movie. Yep.
And she's very visibly upset and has some choice words to say about Cliff being there. And so Kurt Russell kicks him off the set.
Yep. So Cliff gets kicked out of the set that Rick Dalton has just become the heavy on. So then in the next scene, Rick meets his new co-star, a little girl. Her name's Trudy. She's a very smart girl. You can tell very early on. And she's reading a book when he meets her, and she basically gives him some advice. I would say that she's the only level-headed character almost in this movie, maybe.
Other than Sharon Tate.
True. Sharon Tate's pretty level-headed.
No, and this scene is really interesting. One of the better scenes in the movie, actually, because during this, Rick is explaining this book that he's reading to Trudy, and he starts to realize that the book is kind of like an allegory of his life. And so he starts like tearing up, and it's a really touching scene where you really kind of get to see Rick's character and what he's really like. Apparently these kind of stories were popular. They were like novels that you could get for really cheap.
Called Westerns, right?
Yeah, and Tarantino is known for being a big fan of novels. Pulp Fiction is kind of based on novel formatting.
Yeah. So then after that, Sharon Tate, she goes to see her own movie, basically. She goes to the movie theater and convinces the person selling the tickets that she's in the movie, and she goes and watches her own movie. And this is probably where we should talk about it, Ben. There's a lot of scenes in this movie where Quentin Tarantino kind of like zooms in on people's feet a little bit, you know?
Yeah, so we know this about Tarantino. I've watched every Tarantino movie besides Death Proof because that one's is really hard to get your hands on for some reason. If you start to notice and observe his movies, you start to notice that people's feet are shown, bare feet are shown quite a bit, especially women's bare feet. I mean, he doesn't necessarily.
I don't. We don't know if it projects a deeper meaning into Quentin Tarantino's mind, but for sure, factually there are lots of feet in this movie and other movies from Quentin Tarantino.
Especially Uma Thurman's feet. So if she was in this, yeah,
she must. I mean, comparatively, her feet must be better.
Which actually, Uma Thurman's daughter was played in this movie, but we'll get to that later.
Okay, yeah, well, that's pretty cool. And so Sharon Tate, she goes to see her own movie, and that's really all that really happens with her.
That's basically it. This is supposed to be more of a background kind of shot, and we might get more into a debate of the legitimacy of the need for this scene in the movie, because it's just her smiling and laughing and seeing how the audience responds to her scenes in the movie.
Anyway, we go back to Rick, and he's filming as the bad guy, and he forgets one of his lines and basically has a mental breakdown in his trailer. It's actually a pretty nice scene. It's very good acting by Leo, I think. So after that happens, Cliff goes and picks up some hippie girl on the street, also another foot scene, and she makes a move on him. But this is good. I'm very proud of Brad Pitt and Cliff because he asked for her ID. Most guys, I don't know, some guys wouldn't do that, because she kind of made a move on him, and he goes, "What? I need to see an ID. Make sure you're 18."
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell whether his character is probably just learned some things in life. And like he says, he's like, I'm not going to jail over you. This might not be the best reason to reject her advances, but certainly he is a more, he could have gotten away with it most likely. And you can start to see that he's not this awful guy who killed his wife, or at least he isn't anymore. We don't really know the answer to that question. It's just a rumor.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I will say, I didn't like this movie, but I liked the question whether or not he killed his wife, because that's always up in the air.
Yeah, and they never answer it, so it's left ambiguous to think about Cliff's character. And so you get these little things to see how he responds to things. And this would make you think that he didn't.
So then, after the whole scene with the hippie girl and everything, Rick does a very good job in his next scene that he films with that little girl. And Trudy comes up to him and tells him that's the best acting that that she has ever seen from Rick. And she said it was the best acting she's seen in her life. So Rick Dalton takes this to heart, and he starts crying right after she says that. It was actually a very sweet scene.
Yeah, this scene and the other scene with are probably two of the best in the movie. Mm-hmm. Then we get this really good scene at the Manson Ranch where Cliff drops off the girl who we find out her name is Pussycat. So take that as you will. People have weird nicknames in this community of people that we find out are run by the Mansons. It's a very tense scene, and basically Cliff thinks something's wrong. He goes in to see an old friend who owns the ranch, whose name is George, who's played by famous actor Bruce Dern. Mm-hmm. He sees things aren't quite right. Somebody gives him a flat tire. He beats more face beating. The last movie we saw a lot of face beating.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we got 3 slow motion blows to the face showing Cliff's prowess. And he gets this guy to put his spare on, and he leaves. And this is a tense scene, and we might get more chance to talk about it later. But this is also, I think, a contender for one of the best scenes in the movie.
I would say that this is the scene where you actually start seeing that there's kind of a plot in this movie.
There's kind of a direction that it goes.
And this is about an hour in, I'd say.
Yeah.
So an hour in, you're like, I'll say my opinion later. I'll save it.
And then we see more people driving around in cars after this is what I have in my notes. Mm-hmm. And then Rick and Cliff sit down and watch another guest TV show that he's in called FBI. And then this is kind of the end of the second act, I believe. Uh-huh. And we start to see a narrated start to the third act.
Yeah, so basically it set up all the characters, got everything ready, and then now it's going to tell a story about these characters. So the characterization has kind of already happened. Now it's going to see what happens with these characters. And the narrator starts and it goes on. And isn't this where the time jump happens?
Yes.
So it's a 1 year time jump, basically, right?
Yeah, because they go 6 months and they show Rick going into spaghetti westerns
Yep.
with the Al Pacino character.
Mm-hmm.
Schwartz, I think, is his name.
Yep.
And we learn about Rick's Italian careers. He does 4 movies.
Uh-huh.
They're pretty successful. He's not the biggest fan of the style of film, but it does make him a leading man, like Schwartz promised him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also gets married.
Yep. He does get married. He gains 15 pounds also. He mentioned that.
Yeah, he liked the Italian food. His apartment cost a lot of money. Not surprising.
And there's a scene of them in a plane on the way to their last movie, and Rick thinks that Cliff and him will be done after that next movie. So it's kind of a sad scene. They're contemplating what's going to be next in their lives. So, and also Sharon Tate gets pregnant in that 1-year time jump.
Yes,
So-
with Polanski.
Yep. So this is where actually the only action in the movie starts. So
Yeah.
Rick's at his house, right? This is the next
Yeah.
part, right? And he's at his house preparing himself a blender full of margaritas.
Because, as they say, we didn't mention this, kind of important. Cliff and Rick are splitting up because Rick has more expenses now that he's married and he's moving out, and so he doesn't really need Rick. And so
Gotcha.
they're gonna get blackout drunk, as they say, because they're really good friends and they feel like they need a memorable night to end.
They need closure.
Yeah, kind of some closure.
So some hippies, the hippies from the compound the Charles Manson compound that Cliff was at, show up to Rick's house, and Rick starts yelling at them because their lights are on, their music is on, and they're right in front of his house. He comes out, he's drunk, he's mad, he's in his robe, typical Hollywood actor, and getting drunk and getting mad at people.
Yeah, and he's even more mad because we have learned throughout the movie that he really does not like hippies. He
Not
is
at
not
all.
a big hippie fan.
So basically, the response to that is the hippies are like, let's kill everyone.
Yeah, so we get this really good and kind of weird scene that I'm a little bit iffy on the actors, because we got this one girl who's like, I was on my LSD trip and I was going on this thought that we should kill the people who taught us to kill, because she was saying like all the Hollywood celebrities are in these violent movies that teach people to kill, and she's going like saying things like man, like really weirdly, and it seems like slightly overacting. Probably this actor was maybe not the most experienced compared to the other people, but it got the point across. I kind of appreciated it.
So yeah, the hippies break into Rick's house, right?
Yeah,
So
and
they
they
go-
plan on killing him.
Yeah, and they go inside, and this is where the chaos happens. So we didn't mention this, but Cliff has is it a pit bull?
Pitbull.
Yeah, he has a pit bull that's been foreshadowed in this movie for the entire movie. He's always walking this pit bull and stuff, and these hippies come in, they point guns at each other, and basically this pit bull comes and rips this man to shreds.
Yeah. So Cliff is also on acid at this point in the movie.
Yes, that's just something random. He got acid from someone, and he basically just took it randomly that night. So that's just
Yeah.
a plot
So
device.
we're
like
not
that.
really sure whether he's all there when the people come in, and this is a legitimately funny scene.
Yeah.
Because he's asking all these questions to this guy, like, "Who are you?" And he's like clearly tripping,
Yeah.
like, and
Clearly, yeah.
Yeah, clearly. And so you kind of are wondering whether he doesn't even have a grasp of what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you real?" And then, he asks, like, "Who are you?" And he's like, and Tex, who's one of the leaders of the Manson gang, is like, "I'm the devil here to do the devil's work."
Yeah.
And I forget, he has some sort of witty line to come back from
If
that.
only we knew it, so we could
Yeah,
say it.
so we could say it was a good line, but
Yeah.
you'll have to watch the movie.
Yeah, we don't want to give you everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't deliver it as good as
And
Brad
if you
Pitt
did watch the movie, then you already saw it.
So yeah. So basically, there's no point in us repeating it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he whistles to his dog. The dog starts chaos, and then there's other people. Brad Pitt uses a can to just annihilate this one girl, and
Cliff grabs this one girl by the hair and just beats her face into things.
now this is a Tarantino-esque violence scene.
So basically, there's 40% more blood in human bodies in Quentin Tarantino movies.
Yeah, I mean, this is nothing like some of his other movies where blood is like spraying everywhere. Earlier in his career, he was a little bit less generous with the blood because he didn't have as much resources.
Yeah.
But now
blood's expensive.
fake blood,
Yeah.
It's hard to do those kind of stunts. But now that he has all the money, to do it, he's all into the violence that is completely unrealistic.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, he's smashing this girl's face into the chimney, to the table, to the wall. It was real. I think that might be my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, it's a weird scene because you're laughing and cringing and all of this broad spectrum of emotions.
I was just laughing
at the same time.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's like a strange, violent scene. It ends by Leo is in the pool by himself, doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, he has the radio on. He doesn't hear
injured
anything.
lady. His wife even knocks someone out, I think.
Yep.
And this injured lady comes out into his pool with a gun, waving it in the air everywhere. And she doesn't. She's like half. I don't know how much coherent she is, but
She's not. She's actually like her brain was like frizzing out because I think the dog attacked her too.
Yeah.
And she wasn't like mentally stable, so she's just shaking, shooting the gun in the air, not knowing what's going on.
And so Rick goes into a shed and grabs the only self-defense weapons. You think you might have a gun or like a knife or something. Leonardo DiCaprio's character has a flamethrower.
Yeah.
From one of his movies that they just let him keep,
Yeah, back then the regulations probably weren't like that,
And so he just torches this girl in the pool, and she just
I don't know why she
burns
didn't
to
just
death.
go underwater.
Yeah, she was above water.
She was
for
so
way
dumb.
Too long.
She's just getting burnt by this flamethrower, and she could have just literally put her head underwater and not have been burned.
And so then we see Rick is, we see Cliff is going to the hospital. Rick's kind of making sure he's okay. And then Rick is just hanging out at his house after, and Sharon Tate calls, or no, I think Sharon Tate's friend Jay.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. Either way, you get in contact with Sharon Tate, and she asks them what happens. Sharon Tate invites him over.
Yes.
So basically, Rick gets another chance at being an actor.
Yes. So we get Rick's another chance, and then we also get, and I think we should probably cover this now because it's probably easier. Uh-huh. So Sharon Tate, as a legitimate historical figure, she was the subject of attacks from the Manson gang and murdered by them. Mm-hmm. So this is real. So this is another Tarantino alternative take on a history movie.
Yeah.
Similar to that of Inglourious Basterds.
True.
Inglourious Basterds, most people would recognize how unrealistic it is because of how famous the people involved in the movie are. But with this, if you don't know about Sharon Tate, you don't really recognize it right away. But then when you do research, you realize that she was killed by these people, these 4 people, Tex, and 2 girls. The one girl drove away.
Yeah. So you do actually probably have to know some of the history for you to understand. The first time watching this movie, I didn't understand. I do appreciate the movie more now that I know the historical background. But when I was watching this in the theater, I had no idea about any of this. So.
Yeah. I also did not know as much about this movie. So now that we've covered the plot, do you think we should go ahead and do the...
Yeah, let's do that.
So again, we have a point system, and I think this system, I was thinking about it, and it's kind of to... narrow down like the most well-rounded movies. Mm-hmm. So some movies are good at some things, and some movies are good at other things. And I think this movie is this rating system is trying to figure out which ones are the most well-rounded.
What was the first category? Plot.
The plot. So this could be a little plot, but I think this is fair. I give the plot a 7.
Okay. I didn't see a plot. That's the only thing. So I saw a background plot. I saw a B plot.
I think we have to talk about this a little bit. So I don't think this movie was intended to have a plot. So when I say I'm rating the plot, I'm more of rating what this movie is supposed to be, and that this is
what it's supposed to be, not what it is though.
Yeah, like so in terms of well-roundedness, like if I think this has good, like it's a good hangout movie. You're hanging out with these characters, you're living their lives, but the plot is strong when there is a plot, but there's not a plot in the lot.
Yeah, but I don't go to a movie theater to watch people hang out,
Yeah, so I appreciated that a lot. Zach, not so much into it. So Zach, what was your rating?
I gave the plot a 2.
A 2, dang.
Yep.
Zach is shredding the plot. And I think if you disagree with me on assessing the plot, even though I didn't really think that there was like a plot because that wasn't what the movie was intended to be. If you disagree with my high rating, please email me at themovievaultpod@gmail.com, our new email. And explain to me, but the rating is the rating that I gave it, and so it's staying that way. Next, I guess we should talk about sentimentally. I sentimentally like this movie a lot, so I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I give it a 0.
Okay.
Yep.
Zach really hated this. This is like, okay, so this is like 0 is like, what worse?
0 means it means nothing to me. I don't want to watch it again.
Okay.
Like, I would go out of my way to not watch this movie.
Even though you've watched it
like
1.5 times.
If I have 2 broken legs and I'm on a couch and this movie comes on, I'm taking those casts off and walking away.
I would watch it again like right now. So That's why I gave it an 8. But a 0 is completely fair if you think that's what it deserves.
I think it is.
Sentiment is the least fun category because we can't argue about it. Okay, message. Now this is really interesting.
What did you think the message was, Ben?
So the message of this movie is, I don't think it should be rated too highly.
Yeah, me too.
But it's deeper than if you just look at it at face value. So this movie explores things such as fame, nostalgia, career in the Hollywood industry, and even being in a cult. Although I don't think that's the strongest. It's not studied a ton in here. I think the character arc of Rick is very, very well done. And we'll talk about character arcs later. But in the message of his career in Hollywood. But then again, it wouldn't necessarily resonate with audiences who aren't actors. And so, unless you apply it to your life, then you can't see it. And then looking at nostalgia, in that Tarantino grew up in Hollywood during this time. So a lot of this movie is just bathed in this idea of this like romanticized idea of Hollywood in the 60s and how cool and how amazing it was.
That's true. Well, so what'd you give it?
I gave it a 7 because I liked the message.
I thought you said you didn't want it to be high.
Okay, fine. I gave it a 5.
Yes.
We do redo scores here, and that means I'll have to recalculate this at the end. You're right, because the message is there, but it's not deep. So 5 is fair.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to message, I would say Brad Pitt's character and Leo's characters kind of had a good story going. But the only thing is, they don't really go. They go deep with the characters, kind of, but they don't really solve anything. I would say, they kind of just let their faults be there, and they show them what their faults are.
So you don't like that it's more ambiguous in its
I like the ambiguity, but I don't like ambiguity. I think that's what it is. Right?
Okay.
Ambiguity.
Well, I'm personally a big fan of ambiguity. I really hope we do the movie There Will Be Blood on this podcast sometime, because that movie revels in ambiguity. But maybe we might not do that.
I don't know. I just don't. I like ambiguity, but I like movies to have a point. You know.
Yeah. So what did you rate it?
I give it a 3.
3. Okay. So we're gonna get a very. We're already looking at a kind of low score for this movie.
What's the next one?
So now we are on character arcs. Do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I'll start. I didn't like it. I like the actors. I think they have good characters in this movie. Or at least for the main two characters, Cliff and Rick. But they don't really accomplish anything. In fact, I would say that Rick getting an opportunity at the end by Sharon Tate to become a good actor again was the opposite direction that they needed to take for the movie. I think that Rick should have accepted the fact that he's a has-been and just been happy where he is, happy with his wife, happy with his friend Cliff. But he's always trying to go in that direction, and I don't think he learns what he should have learned. Same thing with Cliff. I think that Cliff kind of just accepts who he is as not that great of a guy and just kind of stays like that for the rest of the movie. And he's never pushing towards anything, really. He's just kind of freeloading it.
Okay, this is where I think we're going to have our biggest disagreement.
Okay.
Because so far I
I gave it a 2.
Oh, we gave it a 2.
Yep.
See, I think up to this point I've kind of like agreed to disagree with a lot of your points. And
okay, disagree, Ben. Disagree.
So I disagree with this because I think the character arcs, they're not 10 out of 10s. I give this a 7. So they're not.
You gave it a 7?
10 out of 10.
Are you serious?
Okay, I'm gonna explain.
Okay.
So we're gonna go through the 3 main characters: Rick, Cliff, and Sharon. So
Sharon's a main character?
Yes,
okay,
Sharon is a main character. She's on the billing.
Okay, go ahead.
Rick's storyline is the most deep and most explored character line in the movie. We get a lot of the best scenes in the movie of Rick learning how to become really the greatest actor that he has been. I did some research and learned the background of what Rick's character is supposed to be. And Tarantino says that Rick's character is supposed to be someone who was good looking, they look good on a horse, and they came out to do westerns. Westerns were very popular in the 50s and early 60s, but as the 60s started to end, the style of film and even the style of actors who were considered leading actors changed. There was more of an androgynous look in music and movies that started to take place. Rick did not fit this, and so he found himself left behind. And the idea is that Rick never really actually worked that hard as an actor. We saw he got drunk all the time. We see that thing in the movie where he's just mad at himself. And that scene's interesting because he blows up in his apartment and is talking to himself, and that was based off of Travis Bickle from the movie Taxi Driver, and when he is in his apartment alone, which if you've ever seen that movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, you'll appreciate the callback. And so Rick is not simply someone who is just on this career arc. He's kind of finding himself and finding the ability to work hard for the first time. And I think Zach might be reading a little bit too into the ending of Rick getting another chance. Maybe him befriending Sharon Tate gives him a better chance. Maybe it doesn't. I feel like it's a little bit more ambiguous than just he gets more of a chance. But I like Rick's character a lot, and him and the interaction with Trudy, the child actor, I think was really good. Cliff is probably one of the most interesting characters, but he's more flat in terms of who he is. Rick is designed to be there to study the relationship between the stunt double and the actor. And in the 60s, it was well known that there was more tandems that had this. Actually, Steve McQueen and his stunt double were close like this, which is maybe why Steve McQueen was featured in this movie.
I realize now that you know a lot more than me.
I did some background research.
Yeah.
And so Rick's character is supposed to be kind of the opposite, or no, Cliff's character of Rick, in that he is very, very confident in himself. And he is in kind of the third level of Hollywood in that he has been in Hollywood his whole life, but he's not well known because he's a stunt double. And even now he's starting to not have as much work because Rick doesn't have as much work. Rick is in the second tier TV show star kind of guy who can easily be left behind. And then Sharon is supposed to represent the top tier of Hollywood, or at least that's what her career is going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that they explain the three different types of Hollywood. I mean, there could be more types of Hollywood.
Because Rick was famous and he had a nice house, but he didn't go to the parties that Margot Robbie's character went to. And so Cliff, we don't see as much development because he has already kind of developed as a person. We do see some interesting exploration, and I kind of agree with Zach in that Cliff is not necessarily trying to improve himself, but there's not necessarily anything about Cliff that is unlikable that we know of other than some rumors of stuff that's happened in the past. Obviously, if the rumors are true, it might change our look on Cliff, but that's kind of there for us to weigh with his actions. And we get to see a lot of how he's a good friend to Rick and how he helps him out a lot.
So what number did you give it?
Well, I gave it a 7.
Oh, remember? Yeah. I forgot.
And then I have to explain Sharon Tate's character real quick.
Okay, here's the thing.
Sharon Tate's character was designed specifically by Tarantino to do things that were very innocent. And to present her as a very innocent person so that we can see that when she died in real life, how she didn't deserve it.
Okay, so we watched this with our friend Kenzie, and she kind of made a good point that basically the Sharon Tate storyline, like, why did she have to go and watch herself in a movie? That had nothing to do with the plot. It's basically saying that it's basically just trying to point to that Sharon Tate, like you said, is innocent. She was killed for cold blood. She was killed for cold blood.
Tarantino has an answer for this.
Yes, but the answer is basically diverging from the main point of the movie.
Tarantino says that Sharon Tate is often described because of her murder and not who she actually was. So the simple point of the Sharon Tate being in the movie is to explore that her actual life that she lived and see that Sharon Tate was not just her murder. That's not
needed in the movie.
I think that's fair, but I think it's interesting. And I think if you're going into this movie looking for it to be a snappy plot that moves along really
I think
good.
A girl getting her face bashed in is interesting. I don't think Sharon Tate, her life, like, I don't care about that right now.
Okay.
I don't care about... So I want to watch a Quentin Tarantino movie where they hammer home a point and not that they add in this Sharon Tate, oh, she was good when she was younger, you know?
Yeah. So, but it is important for the setup with the... what was I going to say? It's important for the setup with the Manson scene, because if we don't have Sharon Tate, we don't have any reference point for why the Manson gang is even around. And so, fine, I guess we'll get through. So that's the character arc, which I gave a 7 and Zach gave a 2.
Yeah.
Is where we mainly disagree. The other stuff, maybe I rated it high.
I just see a lot of points in this movie that weren't exactly needed. I think they could have done a great hour-and-a-half movie. Hour and a half, not 2 hours. What is this? 2 hours and 41 minutes?
2 hours and 4. I think they could have cut it down to 2 hours, but you wouldn't get as the depth and the breadth of the movie as much.
I think depth is okay. I think it got too broad.
I think there was more breadth than depth in sections of this movie.
Breadth and depth.
Okay, next we will get to cinematography. What'd you give cinematography?
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9. This was really good, and then I watched the cinematographer describe it and how he filmed in all these different styles, and I was like, I mean, Tarantino movies are well shot, and it's kind of hard to tell which ones are better. But Robert Richardson has done Tarantino movies like forever, since Kill Bill Volume 1, which came out in 2003. So, so he's a pro, and he filmed in like so many different kinds of film, like 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter. Yeah, it's impressive what they did here. Originality.
Okay, I give originality a 5. I think it's original. It takes an ending, and it gives an alternative ending to a historical event. But I don't know, because he's kind of already done that a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6. And I kind of switched that. I had it high, but I think Tarantino has become too much himself in his, or like you watch a movie, and it can be a good thing. You watch a Tarantino movie, and if you watch all the movies and somebody just played them for you and you didn't necessarily know it was the same guy, you could probably start to tell that it was, especially since like.
And I like Quentin Tarantino as a guy. I like his movies.
Oh man, I don't like him as a guy, but as a director.
Yeah, let's not get into that, you know. But yeah, I like him. I like his style. It wasn't as original as his first historically inaccurate movie, but it's just another one in his list of historically inaccurate movies.
I think if we were talking about Inglourious Basterds, which is, I think I would give it a lot more points for originality. But
I would too. Yeah.
He's done this and Django and Hateful. I don't think based as much in reality, but this is not as original.
Yeah. All right, what's the next thing? Acting.
Acting.
Okay.
I'm gonna give this. Let's see what my score was. I gave it a 10.
You gave it a 10.
Oh, I think this is the best cast you could have for this movie. Margot Robbie, if you don't like her character, she did a really good job. And I think Brad Pitt and Leo both hit home runs. All the side characters were playing their parts at A-tier level. Like there was no, and even the smaller cast was like really talented actors like Al Pacino and Bruce Dern.
Yeah, I will say like they had Kurt Russell for like 5 minutes in that movie. So
yeah. So I think you got one of the most talented casts.
Yeah, I gave it a 7, so I still gave it pretty high for acting because I do like Brad Pitt, I like Leonardo DiCaprio, I like Al Pacino, I like Kurt Russell. I mean, they all.
And I guess maybe we should look at the point of reference. Well, maybe we might not have time for that, but for some of the other movies that I've given 10 on acting for, I don't know. Probably some of the other ones are also Tarantino movies. And then finally we get style.
Style. What did you give style?
I gave it a 9 because this movie is freaking cool. Like every shot in this movie makes you want to be in Hollywood. Even the Manson shots make you want to be in Hollywood sometimes.
No, what? Okay, I give style a 5.
Okay, so, and again, this might have to do with me and Zach's differing opinions on what style means.
Yeah.
But I'm mostly looking at, like, the aesthetic, and there's just, I probably some people were like, why are we watching Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie and Roman Polanski drive cars around Hollywood? But I thought that was cool. I liked it, and, like, everything about this movie, the way people talked, I mean, it was just a cool movie. And
yeah, I would say if this was historically accurate, it would probably be pretty realistic. If those events happened. I think the acting kind of goes along with the style because they did act like they were in Hollywood at that time in the 60s. And this movie takes place in like 1969, right?
Yes, 1968. Well, yeah, 1969.
Yeah, so I think that the actors did well with that. I just didn't necessarily like the style of it. I think that all the accents, they were all good and everything, but I feel like everything was just kind of overused throughout the movie, especially in a 3-hour movie like that. If you're kind of keeping that same tone, same style for the entire movie, then kind of just gets kind of old for me, you know?
Yes. All right, so now we got the final scores. So we got Zach over here at a crisp 41%. Brutal. Scathing as compared to the 85% Rotten Tomatoes score that this movie has. I brought it in at 1 point higher than Good Time, 76%, which I think I did a good job because I definitely would have rated this movie a lot harder, but I tried really hard to be a little bit more scrutinous of some of the errors in the film.
I didn't even try to like this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So Zach the style of the movie and the technicality of the movie did not help him like it
Honestly,
anymore.
I think it should be lower than a 40 even. I think it should be like 32.
Jeez.
Yeah, 32.
So that'll probably bring it at the overall rating. I can't do it.
Hey, what is a 32%? Well, we have little phrases for a 32% is a meh.
A meh.
But I gave what is it, 40? You say 40?
41%. You said below average.
Yeah, below average.
Yeah, I gave mine as pretty good.
I would even say it could be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, but I would also say that on a non-objective scale, like we're trying to have an objective scale here, I would probably rate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood higher on a non-objective scale than I would on a like kind of scientific-based scale.
Yeah, but that has to do with sentiment too.
Yes, so the
sentiment is part of our scientific scale.
Yeah, but not a huge weight.
Exactly.
So if I was making my list, I would rate this a little bit higher. You know, I would probably like Kill Bill would probably be rated a little bit higher in terms of percentage than this movie. But I think that I like this movie better than Kill Bill. I do say that I used to rank this above Pulp Fiction. I think Pulp Fiction is a better and more enjoyable movie to watch than this. But it's 5th out of the 9 Tarantino movies that I've seen. I won't spoil my rankings because I don't know what we're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, if you have any movie suggestions, send them into...
It's themovievaultpod@gmail.com. I'll say it again. themovievaultpod@gmail.com. We are still trying to figure out how we're going to decide what movies to do next. We also have Instagram, which I believe is @themovievaultpod as well. And we have Twitter, but we haven't used it at all. But if you want to follow it, it's @themovievault1 because I can't figure out how to change the automatic handle that it gave me. So @themovievault1 for Twitter, @themovievaultpod for Instagram. And if you liked it, share it with your friends. And I do kind of want to do the final score here. So we're going to do 76
plus 41 divided by 2.
Plus 41 divided by 2. So
we can't do math like that
I
on the
can't
spot,
do
unfortunately.
No, it's too much pressure.
Okay, so our average score is 58.5%.
So that will rank it below Good Time on the overall ranking. Good Time had a 67%, which I'm not surprised by because Zach doesn't like this, and this is just an average of our general scores.
I will say, Ben, I do not apologize for yelling at you. I really do hate this movie.
Yeah, and I do not apologize for disagreeing with you. Although I probably should yell at you more because you should like this movie. It's artistic.
I don't know. I think it's kind of garbage. I think it's poop.
Well, if you have if you know of more movies that are like this,
please don't suggest movies like this.
That you can torture Zach with. Maybe we can do like something like really artsy that really doesn't have a plot.
Really artsy. Okay.
Okay, this movie is not necessarily artsy. It's more artsy than some movies though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So share your thoughts at the email and on Instagram. I know this movie tends to be a toss-up on whether people like it or hate it. So do all those things and continue to share the podcast with your friends.
Yeah.
And
We're
your
really
family.
desperate. We're really desperate.
And we are now available on 6 podcasting.
So name them all. What are we on?
We're on...
I know we're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. What else?
We're on Pocket Casts, Radio Republic, Overcast, and we can watch us on Anchor where we're hosted at.
Yep.
And podcasts.com if you would like. Follow us on all of the things.
And thank you to all of our listeners from all those different states. We actually
we had some listeners from out of state. Give us an email and tell us what you thought.
Yeah.
Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts now that you can do that. I'm not going to be the person who's going to ask for a good rating. Rate it how you feel that we deserve.
I will. Give us a good rating,
if you give us a low rating, please explain why, because we are open to constructive criticism, but just giving us a low rating isn't going to help us know what to improve on.
True. If we suck, tell us why.
Yes. All right. With that, I think that's pretty much covered everything. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
And until next week, peace out.
Peace.